With time, probability increases, probability of something occurring. And it's funny, there's been a few people in the public eye at the moment that have gone through sort of mental, cognitive decline. They've experienced bipolar and schizophrenia and things like that. I just wonder if one of these individuals who has these nuclear weapons, these 9 men around the world, if they had some kind of cognitive issue, could they in their delirium or whatever, without anybody being able to stop them, tell their army to launch nuclear weapons? And their army would follow those orders.
Don't you need 2 people to turn the key?
But they're following orders.
They're following orders.
I think that your question, the answer might be yes. I think the answer is actually yes.
And what's interesting is, like, there are certain countries' nuclear arsenals that we don't know about. Now, I happen to get my information on the most current nuclear weapon systems from the Federation of American Scientists, has a group of people led by a man named Hans Christensen that lead a group called the Nuclear Notebook. And they gather the most current information that can possibly be known by anyone and prepare it for the rest of us to read. And it changes every year, and they do a phenomenal job. But for example, they will tell you that we don't really know much about Pakistan's nuclear command and control. We simply don't know. We don't know much about India's nuclear command and control.
Is Russia's command and control, when I was in the silo at least, was still decentralized, which gave almost autonomous launch decision to the commanders at the silos themselves.
What does that mean?
So in the United States, it takes a validated order to clear a computer system before the controlling officers can launch the system.
So the president has got to say launch, and then
he gives an actual validation code that gets carried in the nuclear notebook. And then any system that validates the same code is now armed to launch. Nobody can just launch.
So the president has what's called sole authority. He doesn't ask permission of anyone, not his SecDef, not the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's his alone. He may ask their advice, but it's his decision. He reads in the black book of the inside of the football.
What's the football?
So the football is that satchel that goes around with the president 24/7, 365, also the vice president. Inside of that is a black book. That's what it's nicknamed. It's called the black book, I was told, because it involves so much death. And inside of that are predetermined strikes for all of our enemies or adversaries who might ever launch against us. So it's not a decision-making. They're not sitting around, okay, here's what happened. What do you think we should do? It's, do you want to choose A, B, or C? And do you want to go with subset D, E, F, or Q? It was once described by a man who carried that football as comparable to a Denny's menu.
Each of those line items, I'm going to give it to you in painful detail. Each of those line items is followed by an authentication code. And the authentication code is then put into the football. That authentication code is then sent to every nuclear-capable site across the United States and any nuclear-capable sites in Europe. The authentication code will only work to authenticate with missiles that have the predetermined target set that was in the black book. Now, the emergency action message, the EAM, that is received by the missile crew, they can't determine what it means. They just get a message, an encrypted message. Then they turn it and then they check the authentication code against a bank of authentication codes that they're given every morning. A whole new bank that changes every morning. If the 2 codes match, only the system knows. The crew does not know. And then the crew will follow the action steps of an authenticated message. And then part of those action steps literally include unlocking a safe, pulling out a plastic wrapped piece of paper that you crack open, and then from within that piece of plastic, you crack out another code. And that code is a specific arming code that will arm the weapon system that you are at. And then you go through the whole that's a huge checklist of items until you get the checklist item that says insert your keys and the checklist item where you have the commander of the capsule count to 3, and then you both turn your keys. You're just following orders. You're the whole time.
Did you ever turn your key?
We turn our keys probably 5 or 7 times a week because EAMs are always coming through and we never know what they say.
EAMs?
The emergency action message.
So they've set that system up so that you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
You're just following
There
orders
can
every
be
day.
nobody who's...
It's like a firing squad where everyone's shooting, but you don't know who shoots the fatal bullet.
Yep.
And by the way, everything that he just described can happen, not always, but in as little as 60 seconds.
Yeah, we're timed.
And the terrible joke is they don't call them Minutemen, that's the ICBMs, for nothing.
Based on everything you know, do you think that if Russia launched a nuclear weapon now, do you think the US would respond?
Not even a question.
But do you think they would even know? Do you not think the president, for
Not even a
example, would
question.
think,
Not even a question.
really?
Not even a
Do
question.
you not think they would think it was something else? I mean, there's been times in history where they thought maybe that's something else. Maybe we've made a mistake. They hesitate.
I think that your question is valid because it's not truly instantaneous. There are interceptors, there are countermeasures, there are second and third order intelligence sources that could be checked within just a few seconds, right? One satellite corroborates with another satellite kind of thing. But all in, you have maybe 7 minutes to decide if you're going to counterattack or not.
7 minutes.
Because that's between when you pick up the first satellite signature of a launched ICBM or a launched submarine weapon, depending on whether it's going into the atmosphere or whether it's a cruise missile that's coming straight for your shore, like at most, you probably have about 7 minutes before a counter code, a counter order has to happen.
Because the nuclear bomb is going to get from one continent to the other in approximately 30 minutes. It's actually, if you do the math like I did, it is 33 minutes from Pyongyang to Washington, D.C., and it's 26 minutes and 40 seconds from Russia to Washington, D.C.
You know, we all kind of know Donald Trump's ideology because he's so public. Do you actually think that he would sit there and see something coming, get the intel in, and he would listen to the intelligence? We just said earlier that he doesn't listen to the intelligence.
He might not. I mean, that's the prerogative of the president, and then I mean the other sick part of this, and Annie, you can correct me if any of this is dated. Even if we don't react right away, and everything is destroyed, we have airborne assets that will launch all of our systems after complete annihilation of the United States.
Okay. So even if we were wrong, the submarines and the airborne assets will still...
That's why we have a triad. Again, this always comes back to the deterrence part of it, which is this is why we must have all of this force, just in case, because all of these war games have been practiced and rehearsed so often. But I'm going to tell you a terrifying detail. I interviewed the commander of the nuclear subforces, Admiral Connor, for my book. Not someone who normally talks to journalists. When the book published, he rang me up and asked me to have lunch. Not something that often happens to a journalist. I thought, am I in trouble? Okay. I met with Admiral Connor and he said to me, you never asked me about my time in the nuclear bunker under the Pentagon. And I said, well, how would I have known about that? And he said, he was curious that I had reported that the public does not know how often the Pentagon practices nuclear war. We don't know. Andrew may know. We don't know. It's classified. And what Admiral Connor said to me was, you never asked me what I was doing in the nuclear bunker beneath the Pentagon, and you never asked me how often we practice preparing to tell the president that he needs to launch, to your question. I mean, I'm at the edge of my seat. And he said, guess. And, I started with once a year, right? Because what do you think? I mean, that's like terrifying. And you know what the answer is? 3 times a day.
They practice 3 times a day telling the president that there's a nuke coming into shore.
3 times a day. And I said, Admiral Connor, why do they practice 3 times a day? And he said, there are 3 shifts at the Pentagon in the bunker. And I think the terrifying point that we're making is to your question, which is a normal human question. Like, wait a minute, someone really wouldn't do this. I mean, you would stop and think, this can't be right. All of that, that's the movies. That's not the Defense Department. That's not the system of nuclear command and control. The system of nuclear command and control is rehearsed for precisely go at minute 7. Mm-hmm. And that is terrifying.
I also think that's why we're not moving closer to strategic nuclear war, because you're capable, you're nuclear capable, nuclear ready countries have been doing this 3 times a day, and they all know, what the fuck are we fighting for? If we do this, what's it all for? Like, we're not going to win tomorrow. There's not going to be Putin on a pedestal or Trump on a pedestal saying, we won. everything will be destroyed.
Mutual assured destruction.
So it makes much more sense for them to hold their weapons and continue using it as a deterrent, not just a deterrent for nuclear conflicts, but a deterrent like Russia's using it right now. Nobody will get involved in Ukraine, and nobody will support Ukraine incurring further into Russia because everybody's afraid of what if. That's a huge ace in the hole.
What are you doing about all this information and how you feel about the global conflicts at the moment on a personal level? Is there anything at all you're doing to prepare or anything you're doing to try and prevent it on a personal level, Benjamin?
Outside of my teaching, I mean, when I do media appearances, I just try to talk about this as much as I can. And I design curriculum on media literacy. I think teaching, I teach high school kids, middle school kids how to consume media. And at least if you can't learn about it, to be able to separate information from misinformation and just and whoever I can get in contact with. And here's how you understand. And that involves understanding the use of rhetoric, the use of political persuasion or propaganda. And just so at least we can try to be better informed.
And is there a central concern you have about the world we're heading into and the new technologies and AI and all these things that sits above all other concerns?
It's a breakdown of civic literacy, that we don't understand how governments work. We don't understand how our government works on a local level, on a broader level, and we lose the civic connection with our literal neighbors. We don't care. We're not invested in them. Their well-being is not our well-being. And so it's every person fights for themselves, and I'm going to vote for the person who yells and screams the loudest. So I think a civic breakdown, contributes to that polarization. That's what I'm concerned about.
Same question to you, Annie. Anything you're doing to prepare, and what's your central concern above all others?
Well, on a hopeful, optimistic point, I would say that one of the most fascinating moments for me in this past year was being asked to come to the Vatican to speak to the cardinals about nuclear war, a scenario, so that they could talk to the Pope, and this was Pope Francis when he was still alive, about his and better inform him about his efforts for peace. So how's that for a paradox? Talk about nuclear war to think about peace. And what I learned in that process was that a lot of the hope lies in getting individuals like the Pope, like the United Nations, these third parties that are not government specific, to help engagement for these different nations' diplomats to have better conversations. Mm-hmm. And so you have world leaders who, in essence, I love your point about civics, like just this idea about your neighbor. I got the sense from the Vatican, and I'm not a Catholic, but I got a sense of the neighbor as a concept, the people. And that, yes, we want to have a really strong defense in the United States, and I think that's an important part of national security, if not the most important part of national security. But you must also have a care about your neighbor, others on the planet, and I was really inspired that this whole world exists out there that I was not privy to before at the United Nations, at the Vatican, and elsewhere to get people to communicate.
And Andrew?
I'm leaving the United States, brother. I am fully engaged in relocating and emigrating with my family, finding one of those safe havens around the world where we can just plug in and become part of a community, become part of a globe, understand and raise my children as global citizens, and global citizens who are American rather than American citizens who reject the globe.
Where are you going to go, and when are you going to go?
Or is that classified?
So I'm not going to tell really anybody where. I'll tell you personally where. But we had a plan to leave by 2030, and we're currently on track to execute that plan by 2026.
2026?
Yeah. So
next year.
Yeah, next year. So I already have plans to change my appearance significantly in December, and then if we have everything lined up appropriately, then we'll be leaving the country by spring of next year.
Why change your appearance?
Because I don't want to be identified anymore. I can't legally change like my name, but I don't have to be the guy that looks like this all the time anymore. I've changed my appearance before.
Well, I imagine it was your job, right? But you have a YouTube channel. You do a lot of sort of public education. So you're going to shut down the YouTube channel and all those things?
No, I think what I'm probably going to do is only start serving my audience. Like right now, I do a lot of serving other audiences. That's why I love contributing to your show. I love contributing to other shows. But what I've found is that civic breakdown. Just for anybody who wants to do a thought experiment, if you look my name up and go on any other interview other than the ones here with Diary of a CEO, what you will find is thousands of ignorant, hateful comments, questioning everything from my intentions to my credibility to whatever else. And that's not just me it's happening to. It happens to all of us. I mean, your name is smeared on a daily basis, and it's because I am a fan of you that my algorithm feeds me all the bullshit about you too. That's the world that we live in. So I don't have to continue to feed everybody. I can just feed my audience, and my audience won't care what I look like. My audience won't care if I teach them from behind an animated AI image of myself, right? But I can continue to teach without having to be the CIA guy with the hair.
If you were to make a case for others to follow in your footprints, because I'm somewhat curious, sometimes I have dreams of running away and going to Bali or something and just
New Zealand.
laying low, or New Zealand. What would that case be to someone like me or to anyone listening as to why they should maybe consider getting out of this very polarized, algorithm-driven reality that we live in?
I mean, you can get out of the polarized algorithm without leaving your house, right? It just takes a little bit of practice for your own information security, for your own information kind of insulation. But the case that I would make for really radically changing your life if you're an American citizen is understand that the United States is a country of decreasing influence around the world. And in many ways, the actions that we've been taking recently are to try to rapidly expand our influence again. But we are declining in influence, and we should be. We should be. Our strategy post-World War II was to become the world's bully and to benefit off of all the economic benefits that come from being the world's weapons supplier, financial tools supplier, medical supplier. Like we wanted that benefit. Well, now we find ourselves in a position where we have no strong allies. Like we have countries that like us, but those countries that like us are not strong on their own. So we have a weak Europe that's artificially weak because we've kept them weak. We have a weak Latin America that's artificially weak because we've kept them weak. So the only way to really understand the existence of people outside of the United States is to get outside of the United States, and not just to tour outside, but to live outside, to actually see what it's like to live on the local economy, learn the local language, understand the local culture. I mean, you can walk around Porto, Portugal, and you'd be depressed because you see Soviet-era buildings and everybody's over the age of 50 and they've all got their eyes downcast and they look just totally defeated. But only after you've been there a month, 2 months, and you make a friend, do you actually get into a house and you share a bottle of amazing port, and then they light up because culturally, they don't get to be animated on the street like we get to be in New York City. And if you only live in the United States, you have a perverted view of what the rest of the world looks like. And you have to get outside of the United States to really appreciate what you have inside of the United States. So you got to get the fuck out to understand what you're fighting for back at home. All the people who are here who are just spouting nationalistic drivel, they don't have any idea what they're actually fighting for.
So the reason why you're taking your children out of the country is so that they know what they're fighting for?
So that they understand and appreciate what it means to be American. Not what it means to be polarized, not what it means to be, whatever, whether you're New Yorker or whether you're Coloradan or whether you're Floridian, but to actually understand like, hey, we have a democracy that we need to nourish. We should be proud to serve. The men and women in uniform are making a genuine sacrifice. There's something special about the United States. Unfortunately, the people inside the United States don't understand that for the most part.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.